10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Game over.
Well, look at that. The Montreal Canadiens break a little bit of a skid there and beat the Ottawa Senators, who, rest assured, the rebuild is over for the Ottawa Senators. As we've been told, this is the unparalleled success that we've been assured that they would have under Pierre Dorion. Well, unfortunately, it seems like the 32nd place Canadiens were too much for them, and here we are. So I'm going to welcome in my fantastic guests, the entire cast of Locked On Canadiens, Laura Saba and Scott Matla. How are you guys doing?
Hey, thank you for having us on.
I mean, Laura's fantastic. I don't know where I check in on that. So
Well, I know Laura's got a bit of a headache, and Scott's got lots of things going on too. So we probably won't go as long as we've gone in recent shows, where I went over an hour with Dylan Wall from EOTP the other day, and I think I went over an hour with Scott and Jared last Sunday as well. And I think Laura, we did probably like 45, 50 minutes when we did it together last Saturday.
It was a reasonable time frame. Yeah.
Yes, it was reasonable. We'll try to keep it reasonable tonight as well, but there is a fair amount of stuff to talk about, which somebody says no longer 32nd. True. I mean, going into the game, they were 32nd, but they've managed to get up to, what is it, 31st now? I mean, here's the thing.
The rebuild is over in Montreal, baby. Let's go. Yeah.
I mean,
that's on that group.
It might be closer to the truth, frankly. This team is something else, and I feel like we got to start where we finished off on the last show, which is Cole Caufield. I don't know if there's anything else to say about this kid, but he is just unstoppable. And every game that goes by, the previous coaching staff, I know it's only one guy that's been fired, but the previous regime looks even worse. It is so crazy how good this kid is. And I noticed after he scored tonight that he went straight up to some kids in the audience, and he's vibing with the people to same height as him, which is great.
Superstar quality right there.
I was saying he was hanging out with Chris Weidman's baby this week. He's hanging out with everybody his size. It's fantastic.
It's true. You know what? This is the thing, is that it's a shame because there's 20 games left. He's got 12 goals now on the season. And had he had an even average first half of the season, we'd be asking ourselves if Cole Caufield can actually score 40 goals like Trevor Zegras predicted. And, I don't even know, because every time you turn around and you see the points and stuff, people are like, well, he's on pace in an 82 game season to score this many goals or that many goals. I really, really want him to score like 18 goals in the next 20 games so that he can get at least that 30 goal mark, because it's a shame. Like, I really do feel like his rookie year was ruined, but I also don't think that he's going to be the type of player to dwell on that part. Like, you can see him thriving right now. And I think, 2-3 years down in his career, he's going to look back on this season and he's going to say, that adversity was there. I was really lucky. I was given the opportunity to succeed under Martin St. Louis, and I really seized it. So if he ever has any situation where he's slumping or he's having a tough time or something like that, I really hope that he turns around and he looks at that and he looks at the things that he learned in this season, because I think he's going to have a really long career. I hope it's on the Montreal Canadiens. And somebody asked me the other day, do you think he could be a top 3 player on this team? And I was like, I wonder if he already is a top 3 player on this team.
I mean, since the coaching change, he absolutely is. There's not much to be argued about that. But Laura, you're so good, because you literally brought up one of the things that I had written down as a topic for this show, which is Cole Caufield. That first half of the season, so many people are talking about it as if it's just a write-off and it's a shame that he's not going to win the Calder Trophy. But I'm looking at it now, and exactly what you said, he's passed through the fire. He's done what a lot of Montreal Canadiens prospects have to end up doing. And some of it's by circumstance, some of it's a random thing that they have to get over. Some of it is, being left out to dry ridiculously in the playoffs, like Carey Price in 2009 against the Boston Bruins. And, it looked like he was a broken man when he did the post-series press conference, putting like the hat down over his eyes. I don't know if you guys remember that, with like tears streaming down his face. But Cole Caufield has gone through that. Max Pacioretty with the broken neck thing with Zdeno Chara. A lot of the best Montreal Canadiens players, Saku Koivu, have gone through something crazy early in their career, and they come through it and end up being maybe the better for it. And Cole Caufield has now seen he can be held back, and once he gets the opportunity, he's never going to let go. And that, I think, is going to be a huge benefit as he goes forward in his career in Montreal. Because not only did he have that playoff run where he saw how good it can be in Montreal, he's now seen how bad it can be. And then, this kid's a bust. The playoffs were a flash in the pan. He's come through that. I think that's going to be absolutely massive for sustaining his confidence going forward.
It's wild to me is because there's that photo of him at the Rocket Picture Day, and he is just staring daggers at the person taking the photo. And that was like 2.5 months ago. And now he's out there, he's, celebrating with the crowd, and he looks reborn as a hockey player. He looks like a child on pixie sticks having the time of their life. Like, it's absolutely incredible. Like 13 goals on the season, 12 in 22 games under Martin St. Louis. And I don't think he's going to win the Calder unless he somehow takes his heater to another level, which I don't think as good as he can do, but he's going to steal some votes from like Michael Bunting, and it's going to be hilarious. So like,
yeah, I mean, he has to get some votes, right? Maybe no first place votes, but if he scores, like, I'm just going to try to do the math here. You guys converse a little bit, and I'm going to do the math of if he scores and maintains this pace through the rest of the season, what are we actually looking at for Cole Caufield? So continue, Scott and Laura. Please enable me to do this.
Okay, so I just want to bring up something real quick because it was so cute, and then I didn't notice it until like way after, and I was watching the replay. But like Cole Caufield with that face wash on Brett Kulak after he scored that beautiful goal, like this kid has centered himself on this team, and he's just one of the guys now. They always talk about how great he is in the locker room, how much they love him, how he's uplifting for everybody, and everybody needs that person on their team, right? Like that cheerful kind of guy. But the confidence, with those veteran players just like getting in their faces and like giving them hugs like they used to do to him last year. He's definitely enjoying being a Montreal Canadien. He's enjoying playing hockey again. And I think that like one of the things that was lacking in the first half of the season was overall the team didn't feel like a team. Every night we talked about how a bunch of people showed up and it looked like they were meeting for the first time before they played a hockey game. And that's changed as well. And I find that the fact that it's night and day is so encouraging, because you can have a team that's going through whatever's happened, and all you need is the right dynamics to come into play, and you'll get the best out of everybody on the ice. Everybody can improve.
Yeah. Okay. So not to interrupt your point too much there, Laura, but I did the math. If Caufield continues at this pace to the end of the season, he will have 27 goals.
Wow.
Like it's unlikely. Let's say that it is unlikely just because he is shooting the lights out. But his shot numbers are going up as well, along with this shooting streak. So it's possible. Crazier things have happened. Chris Kreider is shooting the lights out this season to the same extent that Caufield has been, but he's done it the whole year. So things like this have happened. If he gets 27 goals,
he's going to
get
25.
Votes.
If he gets 25.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like 25 and a half a season. A lot of players would dream of 25 goals in a full season. And I think,
he's getting as many assists as goals is the crazy thing. Like his playmaking is unreal. I don't know if they've changed it or if I couldn't see it properly, but it seemed to me like on Kulak's goal,
they didn't give him the assist.
Yeah, he should have got an assist there, I think. Yes. I think he tapped the puck to Kulak.
Let me check the NHL website here. They did not. They gave it to Suzuki and Anderson still, even though I thought Caufield bumped that puck back in the slot there.
Yeah,
but
maybe it tapped off the Senator's stick instead of Caufield's stick, and he kind of like smacked the stick into it.
I'm giving him a phantom assist because he deserves that, because he's a delightful child. And that's the point I was going to make to Laura, is that not only is Caufield shooting so well, he's developing himself as a playmaker. And Jared Book, we talked about it after the Flyers game, is that sooner or later, teams are going to have to go, do we take away the pass or shot from Suzuki or the pass and shot from Caufield? And they're going to have to pick. And more often than not, it's not going to matter because they're that good. Like his hockey IQ and vision is off the charts for a guy who is supposed to be known for being able to be a shooter. A certain Avalanche blogger once said he might be Mike Hoffman if he develops properly.
Oh man, he's got so much more instinct than Mike Hoffman. Like no offense to Mike Hoffman, who I do think has improved a lot under St. Louis. It just Caufield's play without the puck is so much better. Like
It's true.
the way he tracks loose pucks, the way he cuts off passes. This is why when he was at his worst during the year, I wasn't really that worried because it was about like halfway through the season, not long before Ducharme got fired, and people were starting to get like really antsy about Caufield not scoring. I went back and I watched the highlights from last year's playoffs, and I was like, this kid was a shark. You know, like you didn't see where he was on the ice, and then all of a sudden he was there. He was intercepting pucks, creating chances, creating 2-on-1s, creating outnumbered situations down low. He was always on the puck, and you just didn't see that level of confidence in him this year. That doesn't disappear from a player. You know,
I agree.
It's just he was always going to figuring it out to this level so quickly. It's very funny.
That's unheard of, I think.
Yeah, it is pretty unheard of, but man, this kid is something special.
He knows where to be. Like, we know that he could find scoring spaces in the offensive zone. That was something we always knew he could do from his time with the U.S. development team at Wisconsin and then with the Rocket and then with the Habs. And now he's finding the right spots in the defensive zone and in the neutral zone to make other things happen. And I'm not saying he's going to be like a Selke caliber forward or anything, but he's doing enough that you don't have to overly worry about him putting him out there in situations. Like, you can use him as a leverageable situation now. He doesn't need, I don't want to say he could use some sheltering because he still is an offense first talent, but he doesn't need to be poor Mike Hoffman is just the target tonight, but he doesn't need to be Mike Hoffman in a lineup, so to speak. Like,
it's true.
And I think playing
so
with
good.
Suzuki will also like continually put him in situations where he has to develop his defensive game, which I think a lot of his defense is in the offensive zone. You see him like picking off plays while teams are trying to exit the zone. That's like his main contribution defensively, but he's not failing to back check. Like there were several times tonight where he was the first guy back, which is a normal thing since St. Louis took over. And frankly, I thought that was something that he's been doing most of the season. The effort has never lacked. It's just the confidence was not there. And we don't know exactly why that occurred, but we can say that he was not handled very well during the first half of the season. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And sometimes it just happens that you question yourself. And then if somebody gives you something that could be considered negative feedback, whether he was told anything or whether he was just held off the lineup or put on the fourth line for, I can't even think about that. But that messes with you, right? Because then you stop trusting your own instincts, and the success that he's found, you know, all the way up until he actually made the NHL had a lot to do with instinct. I remember in the playoffs last year, some Toronto fans were like, hey, this Caufield kid is actually, you know, having made fun of him for a year. They were like, oh, he's actually quite scary. And I thought they were being sarcastic. But if you watch him on the ice, just the fact, like Scott, you said, he knows where to be, right? He was circling players, looking for the best position to be in to receive a pass, you know, or anything like that. And I would just watch that and I would be like, this kid knows what he's doing way before most players know what they're doing. A lot of players will come to the NHL with a level of developed talent, but they won't have that intelligence until they've had a lot more in-game situations. Whereas Cole Caufield, in some of his first games that he was playing in the NHL against some of the best teams in the NHL, he was handling himself really well and just putting himself in the right place. So when he's questioning himself, maybe his instincts weren't that great, and that was kind of compounding the problem, right? When he was having his slump.
Yeah, I think that's really astute, Laura, honestly. And pointed out in the chat here, Hoffman has actually tried harder defensively under Martin St. Louis. He's still not good at it, but at least he's trying more. I totally agree. I do think his effort level is like monumentally improved under St. Louis. I mean, that's true for most players, right? When you go from a situation where there's just no hope to a bit of a clean slate and playing for pride, A lot of guys look better.
Admittedly, the bar was the floor for Mike Hoffman in
Yes.
terms of effort on defense, but they are correct. He looks better. However, like the bar, a newborn child could have crawled over the bar at the worst points of this season. But yeah, I even tonight, like we talked a lot about Yoel Armia. This is one of the first games in a while that I've seen him been like, there's the guy who got that $3.5 million contract. There was the effort tonight from him. And I'm like, maybe he knows he's getting traded and he wants to look really good, which thanks. Where was this the rest of the year? But I know we say this every time that one of us on the show, but this team's entirely different with Martin St. Louis on the bench. They're not perfect by any means, but they look so much more put together and everything that it makes me wonder what the hell they were doing under Dominique Ducharme. Like I don't know what to say to that.
I'm quite excited to see what he does with Jonathan Drouin, to be honest. That's something where, obviously much has been made of it. Like he's excited to play under St. Louis now and all of that. And I don't think he's getting traded. I don't, there's a lot of talk all the time about teams wanting Drouin or he would have a better fit on another team and stuff like that. I don't listen to that all that much until it happens, right? If and when he gets traded. But he talked about being excited to play under Martin St. Louis, and I'm excited to see, because I think that Jonathan Drouin has on-ice intelligence that is often really, really underrated. And I feel like Martin St. Louis can really drag that out of him.
Yeah, I really don't understand why people are still shitting on Jonathan Drouin, because just watching social media a little bit tonight, looking around at what people are saying. It's his first game back from injury, and people are already like, "Oh, I didn't notice him. He's invisible tonight." Well, here's the thing: like Jonathan Drouin is one of the only guys who actually played to his potential under Ducharme this year, and he missed time with injury, which kind of threw him off a little bit, sure. But overall, I thought he's had a really strong season coming back from, ridiculous mental health struggles. It's been a tough one for everyone, but I thought Jonathan Drouin has been a leader this year. I thought he's been a guy who didn't give up. I do think St. Louis, I don't know what his plan was, but it seemed like he had 3 lines that he liked, and then he had Pitlick, Hoffman, and Drouin left over, and he was like, I guess I'll just put them together and see how it goes. It didn't go well, because all of those guys are really bad defensively, and they just got caved by the Senators. But I think once things settle down after the trade deadline, maybe it looks a little bit more like he can find spots for those guys if they're all still here that are more complementary. But I think all 3 of them together is just a recipe for disaster. So I understand that none of them played well tonight. Maybe like Pitlick was the most noticeable because he's always in the middle and seems to be noticeable all the time. But the people who are so keen to jump on Jonathan Drouin,
I don't get it.
What is wrong with you?
It's because he was that big trade, Pete, and it's always going to be, well, Mikhail Sergachev won 2 Stanley Cups and we needed a defenseman, and Jonathan Drouin got hurt a lot and didn't live up to his potential. I'm like, you mean the one year that they made him play center for some reason, and then he got hurt? He was playing well, and then Ovechkin buried him, and he got hurt, and he was out for most of the year. And then last year, he started hot, got hurt, and then he went through his mental health struggles. And then this year, he started and played well on a team that was hot garbage.
Yep.
And then he got hurt, and players get hurt. What are you going to do about it? I mean, Tyler Seguin cross-checked him in the neck, and then he was out for a while. No one is able to have a reasonable expectation for him because of who he was traded for. And I think that's really unfair, is that we're, 5 years removed from that trade now or something? Like, let it go. Like, just let it go and analyze the player as they are. Could he probably have a higher ceiling? Yeah, but the Canadiens are still, as well as they're playing, a 31st place team right now with Rem Pitlick as their second line center. That's not exactly what you would call prime development and roster building. Like, they can't just, I understand not wanting to break apart Suzuki, Caufield, and Anderson because that's been working, and why break up what works? And you don't want to put him with Dvorak, who's taking all the defensive minutes. So it's like, what do you do? I think Drouin is eager to prove himself and play well. it's just frustrating, which it's his first game back from injury too. I'm not going to judge him based on that, especially in the game against the Senators where it's usually chippy, not very skillful hockey after a couple of goals go in on either side. So like I don't know. People really let Jonathan Drouin ruin their entire day and make it their entire personality and just touch grass and go to therapy or something. I don't know. Like, please just get a grip a little bit, just a tiny bit. Like a little bit of sanity is all I'm asking for.
Yeah,
Too much to ask for.
Yeah, there's a comment here from Canadian Mark says it's not Drouin's fault that Bergevin didn't re-sign Markov and couldn't find an adequate replacement for him. Well, I feel like that everyone on the team suffers from that, right? We've watched the power play stagnate. Markov is the guy that they have not found a replacement for. But I think the biggest issue with how Drouin is viewed by the fan base at large and the media at large is that he was sold as a French-Canadian superstar center. And that was never what he was going to be. And if the Canadiens had paid any attention to his NHL career whatsoever, they knew that that would not be something that he would do. Yeah, he played a little bit of center in the Q in his last year when he was 19. Like, so he was too good for the Q already. Like, it didn't matter. Lots of guys play center in junior and aren't centers in the NHL. And, you know, Drouin, I don't think effort level has ever been an issue for him. You talk to people in the media who go to practices. He's always a hard worker in practice. He's incredible to watch in practice. He seems like he's got the focus is there. It's just that defensively, not everything is quite there. Like, he just doesn't make the right decisions. I think he's worked on that a lot. He's still not great defensively, but he's not the disaster that he used to be. And offensively, he's limited by the fact that he's a very specific style of player, right? He doesn't go to the middle. He's a perimeter playmaker. So you have to find people who he can pass to. Canadiens haven't really done a good job of setting him up with players that match his skill set. So I don't know.
That's not his fault.
No, that's not his fault. And the fact is, he still produced about 50 points per 82 games with the Canadiens, which is about what you expect for a $4.5 to $5 million player, which is what he's getting paid. So I understand that people wanted more from Jonathan Drouin, but what you actually got is not as bad as you think.
Right. I absolutely agree. And I don't know, because this is at this point when was he in the Q, like 10 years ago? Was the Q always a highly offensive league, or is it just in recent years with, like, you know, the defense being optional and all of that? Because I know that the Q is very much a run and gun kind of style, right?
Yeah, the Q is weird because it's definitely a more run and gun league of the three Canadian hockey leagues. But a lot of the high end defensive forwards also come out of the Q. I guess because they have to play against that. The Q used to be like a goalie development league, and that's just gone completely. Like, you don't see very many high-end Quebecois goaltenders coming into the NHL anymore. But for whatever reason, the QMJHL develops, you know, high-end defensive forwards very well, and a lot of the high-end offensive guys just don't seem to turn out the way that you expect. I don't know why. But it's definitely something for Quebec to investigate. I don't know if it's a problem of scouting, too. It might just be that it's just not as heavily scouted as the
OHL?
The OHL or the Western Hockey League. And maybe they could find more diamonds in the roughs if they look for it. I mean, look at what the Tampa Bay Lightning have done. But, I mean, something to watch with the Tampa Bay Lightning, total tangent, but people have been talking about that big trade they made for Hagel, right? Where they 2 first-round picks, and they got 4th-round picks back. And I saw a bunch of people being like, "Oh, well, they're only moving down about 70 spots in the draft. So with the drafting that Tampa Bay's been able to accomplish, you know, it's not a big deal for them." I mean, 70 spots is a lot.
It's a lot.
And also, Tampa Bay actually lost the scout that found all of their like high-end Quebec players. He works for Arizona now. He's Arizona's head of scouting. Head of amateur scouting. So look for maybe not as many QMJHL diamonds in the rough coming out of Tampa Bay. You can't sustain greatness forever. So Tampa Bay, as good as they are, might be the first three-peat in the Cap era, which would be the first like actual real dynasty. Eventually things will fall apart.
Maybe it's the Habs benefit there then. Like I look at what they did last year getting Joshua Waugh, who has been like an absolute steal in the 5th round. Riley Kidney's been really good. And Xavier Simoneau seems to be following the same path as Raphael Harvey-Pinard as an overager, doing exactly what you expect and then seeing what's from there. And I know with the Canadiens, it's always a very different subject a little bit because more people want more homegrown players. And the debate's always been, the people coming out of the queue haven't been as good as the OHL or the WHL or college or the U.S. development program in North America. There's good players, but they're either gone or there's someone better right there in front of them. And I can understand for years why Montreal picked other players. And I look at the OHL especially. It's that nice little middle ground. It's not as defensive as the WHL, and it's not as pixie sticks batshit insane as the Q, but it seems to churn out the most regularly very good NHL players. It's why wouldn't you go to the biggest source, not just for your own team, but other teams? I lost track of my point there for a second.
I know what you mean though, Scott. Okay, let's shift a little bit here because we'll talk about the game because I got us off on major tangents. Jake Evans, how good is it to see guys like him and Armia score after how strong they've been playing lately? Because I know Armia is like the pariah of the fan base this year because, I mean, he's been terrible. There's no way to sugarcoat it. But it was last weekend that he stopped playing the puck and started playing the body, and he's been really effective since he made that choice. I think he's played his best hockey of the year. Again, super low bar, I know, but he's been great. And Jake Evans is a guy that every time I watch him, I really like.
You wish he had better hands, right?
Yes, or just like something is missing there, right? But like sometimes he scored maybe the nicest goal of the season.
Yeah,
right? Like
he's done that in the past too. I think last year he scored a really beautiful goal.
Yeah, so
and it was like
maybe
his
it's not
one out
hands.
of like.
I don't know. Maybe it's just like the connection to the hands, like the ability to marry the hands to the speed of the skates. Because
the controller got disconnected.
Yeah, good
But
skater.
every now and then it reconnects and he scores like an ESPN top 10 goal. And you're like, where the hell did this come from? He did it against Anaheim. And the only reason no one friggin' remembers is because Trevor Zegras did a running Michigan 5 seconds afterwards. Like,
That's true.
Poor guy.
like,
Poor Jake Evans. But you're right, Andrew. There's something missing. But every time you watch him, he's giving it 110%, which is the worst cliche to use. But you know that's what coaches love. You know that's what hockey people love, is giving that, going above and beyond. And he does that all the time. Like, he is such a good caliber bottom six forward in my mind. And he also, I think, whenever the team is doing bad, whether it's under this coach or the previous coach or the previous coach, he's still playing well. I think the thing about Jake Evans is that he understands his role really well, is what I find. And that's why, he's not a guy trying to be a top six forward. He's not a guy trying to be an offensive dynamo, even though he sometimes does have the hands. He's like, this is my role. I am a fourth line center. I kill penalties. I need to be smart defensively. This is what I'm going to do. And he does it with a big smile on his face. I love that.
and to your point about Armia playing the body, and this is going to sound like the potentially dumbest thing I've ever said, but there's a lot of contenders. Joel Armia needs to learn from Rasmus Ristolainen in that he can use his body because he's gigantic. Joel Armia is 6'4" and is built like a brick shithouse. Learn to use that physicality because he's just going to hammer guys off the puck if he leverages his body properly. Ristolainen does that improperly because he has 3 functioning brain cells and he used all of them to sign an extension with the Flyers. Armia is a smart enough player to know what to do with the puck when he's playing his best. And like you said, when he's been more physical and uses his body to leverage people off and protect the puck is when he's at his best. That line in the playoffs with Eric Stahl and Corey Perry was a nightmare for teams like the Jets to play against because it's just 3 guys who are just going to shield the puck from you and keep the cycle going until you're too tired to defend, and then they score a goal. Joel Armia is a fourth liner with someone like Paul Byron and Jake Evans, who are all hustle all the time, is such a frustrating thing to play against if Armia is working you along the boards because it's a lot of weight you got to battle against, and then you're tired, and then you've got 5'7" Paul Byron sneaking into the slot, and you're too tired to catch up to him. If it all works properly and everyone's playing at their best, it seems really simple to put it all together that way. And I understand if they trade Yoel Armia. I do. But when he's at his best, he's such a very valuable piece for the Canadiens when everything is clicking in. He's a great jack of all trades piece for them, but they're not getting that value so far this year. And if he rediscovers that, great. It means his trade value is even higher, and he can go to another team and the Canadiens can continue their retooling, rebuilding, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, I would imagine that there's many coaches that have had Yoel Armia who just think in the back of their head, if this guy was mean, he would be such a player. Like if he was just a bastard, he would be impossible to play against because he's got not only the ability to and the strength to do that, but he is able to hold on to the puck while hitting people or like just controlling them with his body. And when he's able to put that stuff together, he has great games. There's games he's played for the Canadiens where it's like, is that Ariel Lemieux? And then he goes on a 10-game trip where he does nothing, right? And it's never rational to see the one game and say, oh, that's what this player is. Clearly, Mark Bergevin thought that. That's where we are today. But I digress. I think Armia is a valuable player, but he's one of those guys where it's nice to have him, but it's a luxury. And for a playoff team that can afford luxuries, maybe he's attractive. I don't know about this year, maybe next year with the term that he has left. It's a tough sell, I think, in a flat cap. But there have already been rumors that people have kicked tires on him, so maybe it's interesting. I think Monday is going to be really exciting. Moving on from Armia, also, Byron scored as well. All three of those guys scored tonight. That's fantastic. One thing, we talked about, Scott said controller disconnected, or maybe it was Laura. I don't remember now. I assume it was Scott because I assume he was the gamer. But Alexander Romanov, who I think has been much better the last little while, I'm still not sold on him being a part of the core going forward. However, have either of you guys looked at his relative differentials now that he's not playing with Ben Sherratt?
Yes, I know what those are. I assume they're better because, in all respect to that very handsome draft pick generating machine, not very good at playing defense, so I assume it's better.
Yeah, he's at about the last 3 games, plus 30% relative in expected goals for percentage. And he's playing tons of minutes, split between Corey Schooneman and Brett Kulak. Now, Brett Kulak is a great facilitator. Everyone he seems to play with does really
better.
Well.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's just if he's super easy to play with or if he's really smart or that he just makes plays that enable all of his teammates to make better plays, because he's not exactly, despite the amazing goal he scored tonight, he's not exactly an offensive dynamo. You watch him defending, he's not the most amazing defensively in the defensive zone. So it's like everything else in his game makes him special, right? And that's really helped Romanov. But he had that shift on the PK today, the only goal that the Senators scored. And that was, in my mind,
Not
almost
good.
entirely on Romanov, because he lost his stick and then he just stood there with his arms down for 10 seconds doing nothing. And then when Dvorak finally gave him his stick, he was like, okay, I've got my stick. I'm just going to abandon my position on the left side defense and go over here for no reason.
I'm wondering
It
if
looked
he's
like
on.
he panicked because then you looked at him on the ice on the bench afterwards, and I think somebody was showing him the iPad because he was shaking his head at himself. And I think he literally, it looked like the loss of the stick just disconnected it completely, right? He just panicked from then on. Until he got off the ice, it was just going to be a panic attack. But can we just go back to Brett Kulak for 1 second?
Sure.
I really love that in the post Ben Sherratt trade press conference, Kent Hughes said that the Canadiens like Brett Kulak.
Yes.
If they get an offer that will blow them away, they will trade him, but they would like to keep him, because that to me makes me realize that this front office has the right way of thinking. They know what to value. Brett Kulak is never going to be a number 1 defenseman. He's never going to be, your top anything, but he's a supporting player that's better than a lot of players in the NHL that play his role. So I think that to me is like, and it's the same thing like I always say, and you've heard me say this before on both of our shows, there's such a thing as a good bottom six player, right? It's not just replacement level. And it's the same thing with bottom pairing or lower pairing defensemen. It's not just a replaceable. It's not just you have your number one defenseman and then the person that plays with him and then everybody else can just be crappy. That's not the way it works. So like when you have a guy that is put in the Brett Kulak role and you look across the NHL, you look at all the supporting players in the NHL, he is better than a lot of them at what he does. So you keep him, because if you lose him in the offseason, if you lose him via trade and he signs somewhere else or whatever, you're going to have to find a guy that makes the people he plays with better. And it's so rare to find that in a lower pairing defenseman.
You're right. And sorry, Scott, the one thing that really stuck out to me about that whole situation with Brett Kulak is how often do you remember in the last regime them coming out and saying publicly that they really appreciate a player? I remember them undercutting Alex Galchenyuk publicly, but outside of like Brendan Gallagher when he re-signed and Bergevin was like crying, or like Carey Price, like outside of the star players, you didn't really hear them talking about how much they liked the player.
They appreciated a player.
You heard Bergevin undercut Kotkaniemi, several times last year, including after the Stanley Cup final, like saying, like, oh, well, we don't know what he is yet. This way that Kent Hughes speaks about his players, you look at like how Toffoli talks about leaving the organization and how much respect he has for Kent Hughes and Jeff Gorton. These kinds of interpersonal things where they're not burning bridges. You see like Ben Sherratt. Oh, I'd absolutely love to re-sign here. Well, let's not do that. But love that he thinks that.
But the fact that he feels good about the way it ended is such a positive.
Burning no bridges will benefit you.
It's almost like he's a player agent and he knows how to deal with people and players like this. And to get back to Brett Kulak for 1 second, and to talk about people being appreciated, is that I knew Brett Kulak was a smart player because the Rocket were playing in Rochester in a game. And afterwards I talked to a few players and he's standing there talking to Byron Fraze by the exercise bikes, and they're looking over something and they're breaking down an entire power play and penalty killing shift. And he's like, I had this guy, he's saying, I had F1 here and I have this here. And they're breaking it down. And he goes, I missed this read here. And then you look at it the next game, he doesn't make that same mistake again. He looks through these things and analyzes them and knows what he's got to do. Is he flawless? No. But he's smart enough to pick up and know where he's got to learn things. And he is easy to play with because, he can rush the puck down the ice and occasionally dangle through three guys and score a goal. Sure. But at the same time, he's the guy that you give the puck to. He gives it to you with speed, and then he changes, and the next group comes on. He's the safety valve of the defense. And so is Joel Edmondson to an extent. Joel Edmondson's not going to rush the puck, but he'll pass you the puck and then get off the ice for someone who will. And I think that's a really interesting balance there, is that I don't know what Brett Kulak's future hold. I would love to have him back in Montreal again because someone like Jordan Harris, I think, reads the game a lot like he does. They're very smart and they make the safe, smart play. And then occasionally they do something high risk because the opportunity is there and they see the benefit to it. They don't do it just for shits and giggles. They do it because it's the right play to make. And I think he'd be a really good teacher for those young defensemen coming up before they hit their next stride and start to enter their prime and really, truly grow as an NHL player.
I guess, Andrew, there's your answer then. He's just smart.
Yep. There's a bunch of people in the comments as well saying he's just smart. Apparently, this is pretty crazy. The NCAA just overturned the result of the Minnesota versus Michigan game and are restarting the game in overtime 40 minutes later. The goal wasn't legitimate in OT. 40 minutes later.
Wasn't Michigan winning Michigan was winning 4-1. I thought, what? Hold on.
They
apparently went to overtime.
They have to suit back up in that sweaty, disgusting gear that's like dripping that hasn't even gone through the dryer yet.
I mean, 40 minutes, a couple of those guys might have had a couple beers by now, Like,
oh yeah.
That's a mess right there. I will say about about the whole situation on defense, I think we're gonna see Harris pretty quickly here. I think they're gonna sign him and he's gonna play out the rest of the season, burn that year in the contract because that's what the college guys love to do. It'll be very interesting to see how he fits in. Moving on to the next thing that I had written down, which I'm sure many people will say that this is dumping on him, but I'm not trying to dump on him. Josh Anderson. I had a thought while watching him today, is that Josh Anderson plays like all of Max Pacioretty's critics wanted Max Pacioretty to play. I mean that in a bad way. Like, it is the way that Josh Anderson should play, but it's a less effective style. And obviously he doesn't have Pacioretty's release, so he could not play the way that Pacioretty played. But just the way that he plays, it's the same kind of, he's only a shooter. You watch him make like a 3-foot pass and it misses by an extra 3 feet. Pacioretty did that crap too. And you're like, why is he not effective on the power play? Because he's just a trigger man, and you have to find a bunch of setup men for that trigger man, plus have a decoy. Yeah, Anderson, I like him. I think he's playing his best hockey with the Caufield Suzuki line, but still a little bit frustrating to me.
Did you notice tonight he had this one back check that looks exactly like his forecheck? Like, he does one thing in both directions. I love him.
Is it crash into the end boards? Because he's very, very good at that. I love Josh Anderson. I think he is such a fun player, but he feels, we talk about luxury players. Josh Anderson feels like a luxury on certain teams. And unless he's gotten a little bit more patient with the puck this year to make better reads, but it's not his strength. His strength is, you feed me the puck while I am flying the zone, and I'm going to turnstile the defense, and I'm going to rifle this one by the goalie, rinse and repeat. Asking him to play a cycle game is asking the wrong thing of Josh Anderson. If you were taking an offensive zone faceoff and Anderson is not getting the puck with speed, he should just change for someone who is going to play better in that cycle. And we love Josh Anderson a lot, but his limitations are very obvious. His physicality is great. Don't get me wrong. I love watching him throw hits on the forecheck. I love watching him score goals at high speed. Watching him be a part of a cycle game is like watching someone trying to park one of those giant container ships into a very narrow space, only they're bad at it. It's just like, just go away and let someone else do this, please. Like,
I think he does fit pretty well on that line, even though he isn't a great participant in the cycle game, because he opens up space for those other two guys. Because when you can get Caufield and Suzuki's creativity combined with just the, not deer in the headlights, but bull in the china shop. That's what I'm thinking as far as idioms go. Like, if you can get him set up to where he's breaking through defenses and everyone's like, oh crap, we need to back off. And then all of a sudden you can find Caufield as the trailer. It becomes pretty dangerous, and that's really interesting. I do wonder if he's a long-term solution there, though, just because of his limitations. Friend of both of our shows, Ian Boisvert, says, I saw a tweet once that said, Anderson plays alone, and I think about that a lot. I think before he was on this line, that was extremely true of his game. And something that I brought up last year in the playoffs is when people were criticizing him that, or was it him? No, it was Kotkaniemi that I was bringing up, that they were playing Kotkaniemi with Anderson and Byron, two players whose success is hinged on just their own play to themselves, right? Like, Byron is fly the zone, get a breakaway. And Anderson is a lot of the same, but also crash through 15 people on the way there and possibly murder someone. And then either do the same move where you try to cut in front and miss the net, or try to pass and it goes back into your own zone. So Kotkaniemi had really nothing to play with off of that. That was my argument last year. But anyway, yes, I do feel that with Josh Anderson, but I think he has more simpatico with those two playmakers, those two dynamic young skaters, where he can kind of just be like dad and muscle everybody off of them.
Mm-hmm.
He speaks a lot too, and I know this isn't on ice thing, but the way he speaks a lot to the media about the team and what's going on, especially since Martin St. Louis comes in, I know that he's a younger guy considering the makeup of the team overall, but he seems to just know what to say. He's been their first teammates. There's from when they played Toronto last year, Caden Primo got absolutely shelled by the Leafs, and the only one to come up and talk to him during the intermission was Josh Anderson, a guy who went through his own struggles at the NHL level. I mean, he had injuries and he had inconsistencies going up and down. There's something about it that works. Like you said, he's dad to Caufield and Suzuki. And like I said, I don't know long term if it's going to work, but something there, when they're not all together, it doesn't feel right, even though Suzuki and Caufield, I'm pretty sure, can play with anybody on their other wing and probably have some success. but it feels right when all three of them are together. It feels dangerous that you have a guy that if they're attacking with speed, do you go defend the shooter, the hybrid playmaker shooter, or the shooter who weighs 230 pounds and is going to run you through the end boards if you stand in his way? And you've got to make a decision, and most NHL defensemen do not make the right decision in that regard because you have about 2 seconds or you're screwed. I
think that's exactly it, is the speed with which they all play together, right? That takes away the defense's ability to do anything about it. And I know you brought it up as a critique, but like the more we talk about him, the more he endears himself to me. Like I love Josh Anderson. He's one of my favorites. It's so ridiculous watching him on the ice, but he's an enjoyable player. I mean, I kind of felt a little bit that way about Ben Sherratt in that I knew Ben Sherratt is not good defensively, but watching him was enjoyable
seeing him put guys in headlocks is never not funny.
And like shoveling people out of the crease, like they have no chance, right? So that kind of stuff is enjoyable. And I think that Josh Anderson, it's very much like you said, like his best way of playing, it doesn't complement anybody else. And that's why you kind of have to use him. What's up?
So I have an actual statement about that overtime goal. I know that we are like 10 minutes past that, but from the CCHA. So the CCHA instantly reviewed the Minnesota State goal at 3:02 of overtime and initially ruled the play as a good goal. Additional TV production camera angles made available to the officials provided conclusive evidence that the goal net was elevated and the puck entered underneath the frame. The play on the ice will be overturned and ruled no goal. The ice will be resurfaced, 5-minute warm-up, and they will come back out and play. Could you imagine if the NHL actually had the other angles to like go back and do this?
I would like to think that a goal like that wouldn't get past the NHL, but this is also the NHL, so it probably might at some point. I think, and that's rough. That if you're the team that won,
I'd be so angry right now.
You got to be so mad, and you have nothing really to be angry about except for the officials missed it because you didn't actually score. But that's a tough pill to swallow. There was one.
There is a Habs angle to that, by the way. If Minnesota State
there, right?
Yeah, if no, he's not playing, but if Mankato wins, Northeastern will most likely be out, I believe, if I read this correctly. I'm scrolling through the EOTP Slack. So Northeastern is in if the Mankato goal stands. If it doesn't, they still need Minnesota State to win in overtime. So if Minnesota State loses in overtime, Jordan Harris will likely be signing his contract sometime on Sunday.
Yeah, okay. That's interesting.
How does college hockey affect the Habs?
Yeah, I mean, there's always somebody to talk about with the Habs. There was also a comment here that I wanted to get to saying that Caufield and Suzuki's chemistry allows Anderson to be Anderson, which I think is a great point. I think there's also the consequence of Suzuki and Caufield being so dynamic also kind of makes teams forget about Anderson, which is weird because he's a giant. And then it's like when he gets the puck, they're like, oh shit. Oh, he's out here.
There's that guy.
How do you miss him? He's 6'4".
Hey guys, it's Josh.
Hey guys, it's Josh.
All right, the last thing that I had written down here. I mean, we didn't even talk about Jake Allen. We should probably just at least mention Jake Allen because he was fantastic.
I'm glad to see him back.
Oh man,
I'm glad to see him back.
I don't like. I hate dumping on Montembeault because he's been put in a crap situation, and he has been a lot better in the new year. But seeing Jake Allen play and how good his mechanics are, it's a refreshing change, to be honest. It makes things much more calm at the beginning of games when Jake Allen is out there making big stops. And I think his stop on the breakaway from Gaudette when it was 3-1 was probably the moment the game changed. Because 3-2 is a lot different, right? So, but not to stick on Allen because I feel like there's just not a lot to say. There was one thing mentioned on the Hockey Night in Canada broadcast from Gary Galley that I had not heard until now. Maybe you guys had. But apparently, among hockey men, there was some hurt feelings when Martin St. Louis was hired. Because he hasn't put in his dues.
Why does that not surprise me?
Shut the fuck up.
Like, I think he has a Hall of Fame career that says that he has. I mean, do people say that a GM hasn't put in their dues when they just hire every former player? I have to say, I love it when hockey men are pissed off, and it just makes me like the Martin St. Louis hire even more. And the fact that hockey men were pissed makes me confident that, Hughes and Gorton aren't afraid to piss off hockey men.
That's another really good point. Like the more they talk and the more I learn about this front office, the more confident I feel as a Canadiens fan. But can I just say that every time something pisses off the hockey men, it works out. Like at some point, won't people realize that like everything they think is wrong? And I don't mean to shit on people who have played or have, been GMs or coaches or whatever, because I get a lot of that. It's like, Laura, you've never played hockey, you've never coached hockey, but here's the thing. Hockey itself has evolved. So when people who are entrenched in former forms of hockey are angry about something, then it's because they're being left behind and they haven't evolved with the game. And they can evolve, like they can move forward into the future by evolving, becoming, more knowledgeable, changing the way that they approach things and all of that. Because Martin St. Louis played in that era, but he learned a lot since leaving hockey. And like he had a long enough career that the game evolved in front of his eyes and he just adapted to it, right? Like you have to think about things differently. And that's why it's just like, it never surprises me that the hockey men disagree with something and then they turn out to be wrong.
I want to know who in the hockey men said this, because if they were to be in a room with Martin St. Louis talking, at no point in time would they ever look at him in the eyes and go, I don't think you've paid your dues to do this. You're going to tell a Stanley Cup champion, a Hockey Hall of Famer, one of the not even arguably, the best undrafted player of all time, that he hasn't paid his goddamn dues to coach an NHL team? Are you out of your mind? Like, what does he have to do? Run the Edmonton Oilers into the ground? Run the Bruins into the ground? Be utter dog shit on the Sabres for 3 years? What do you want him to do, folks? Like, what is paying your dues in the NHL? Like, is he going to be long-term for the Canadiens? Who the hell knows? All I know is he's paying his dues right now. He took over a team that was not able to complete a breakout pass for about 6 months and has turned them into one of the hottest teams in hockey right now, and easily one of the most exciting. Without his starting goaltender, without their team captain and number one defenseman, without a good chunk of their lineup, they're still playing a lot of AHLers up and down the lineup here, and he's getting results. I don't give a shit about paying dues if this is what he can do with less than optimal circumstances. And the fact that someone does is why hockey remains the fourth most popular sport in North America. Because it's so gate-kept at every level, even for a Hockey Hall of Famer, that it's almost insulting to the fans. That it's like, well, yeah, you could have this exciting guy, or would you like to have Ted Nolan back?
Yeah, I mean,
and just
John Tortorella. There's a comment here, and I'm gonna layer it into more, but somebody's saying hockey men hate short kings, confirmed from Rock Smasha. I mean, they do. Let's be real, and also, this is probably the same group of people, let's be honest, that told Marty St. Louis that he wasn't going to make it his whole life. You want to tell Marty St. Louis he's not going to do it again?
Go ahead.
Yeah,
and I took that personally.
Exactly.
And yes, he's going to win a Jack Adams and tell someone to go fuck themselves at the NHL Awards next. Sorry, he's too polite to say that. He's going to say, for those who didn't think I could do this, or something a lot kinder. I will tweet out the translation where he is telling them to go fuck themselves, because that's what I would do in his situation, which is why I'm probably not an NHL coach or on Hockey Night in Canada for that matter. But what are you going to do?
And the thing with him is that, like he just said, he's like, all I want is the opportunity to put into play what I've been thinking, right? It was an experiment for him too. Like he had an idea of how this would work and how he wanted to be an NHL coach. And, all he wanted was that shot. And the Canadiens, luckily for us, gave him that shot, and it's working out, right? So he was on to something, right? It's not like he said that he wanted a long contract or a high salary or anything like that. He said that part was not important. He just wanted one opportunity. And look what he's doing. Like now I'm thinking of the Eminem song, but he got that one shot, one opportunity.
Vomit on his sweater already. Mom's spaghetti. Oh my God.
Now I'm imagining Martin St. Louis like trying to rap this with like his Quebecois accent, and I
bet you he could do it. Just tell him he can't do it, and he'll come back a week later and it'll be flawless. All right, we'll probably wrap it up there because I don't want to keep everybody too long. Thank you all for joining us here. Before we close it out, first Laura and then Scott. I guess it's going to be mostly the same thing. Tell everyone where they can find your stuff.
So you can find the podcast Locked On Canadiens. Just search Locked On Canadiens. You'll find it wherever you get your podcast. We're also on YouTube. Please subscribe. You can find me on Twitter at The Active Stick. You can find the podcast on Twitter at LO_Canadiens. And now I'll leave it up to Scott to talk about all the other hockey things he does.
I don't do much. I am the other half of Locked On Canadiens. So as Laura said, please find us on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And you can find all my writing and stuff at Habs Eyes on the Prize. With the trade deadline coming up, there's going to be a lot there. And you can follow me on Twitter at Scott Matla, where I am very sorry in advance for everything else. So they gave me a check mark. I don't know why, but they did. So I am all powerful in that regard.
All right, I will close out the show with a little treat for everybody who's still here because I was actually supposed to do this on St. Patrick's Day and I forgot. I just lost my train of thought at the end. But my oldest son, Dylan, wanted to record something while before the game was starting on St. Patrick's Day because he learned about St. Patrick's Day in school. Laura and Scott, I don't think will be able to hear it, so they'll have to watch the video after. But it's just like a minute of Dylan trying to remember what he was told in daycare. Very cutely, but here it is. Dylan wanted to tell everyone the story of St. Patrick's Day. All right, what did you want to say, buddy?
You know, St. Patrick Day is when you celebrate what?
You were the one who wanted to tell the story.
When we celebrate St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah? And what does it mean?
And it means we can have St. Patrick's Day candy.
Oh, is that what it's all about? Yes? Anything else that it means?
Also, St. Patrick's Day candy is only green. And the spring is green.
Spring is green. You're right. Spring is green. Are you excited for spring?
Yes. And Easter has chocolate.
That's true.
For bringing it to people that are doing good behavior and sleeping.
Mm-hmm.
And to make it as a surprise for us.
Yeah? What do you do on Easter morning?
I do on Easter morning, eat my breakfast very fast and then get the chocolate.
How do you get the chocolate?
I finding it first and finding my house and opening it for my house, and then it has yogurt dots in it. My house eats it all.
Yeah?
And then he asks more for me, and then I give him more.
That's very nice. Do you do an Easter egg hunt?
And that's called an Easter egg hunt.
That's pretty fun. All right, do you want to say bye to everyone?
Bye.
All right, time to go to bed.
Time to go to bed.
Thank you, buddy.